Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to another edition Outlawed Live. Mike Idle flying solo tonight, covering for Ron Stone, who is literally flying as we speak. He's got a little traveling he's got to get done. So he's headed out east and taking care of some things. So just myself tonight, but don't worry, we've got an awesome guest that we're going to bring on and chit chat. Got a five-time national points champion that we're going to have on the show this week. Go ahead and comment. Who do you think that is? You know, I've been keeping track of this stuff. All-time points champions, five-time point champion. This ties this puller 13th all-time in the point standings for national championships with the Outlaw Truck and Tractor Pulling Association. So comment now. Who do you think is a puller that has five national points championships under their belt? I'll give you a hint. It's a puller fairly young, still a lot of pulling ahead of them. They're going to be climbing that ranks as they move forward. But before we get going, I've got a big shout out that I want to give tonight. Sporting a brand new t-shirt. This is something I'm very excited about. I've got my Texas Blue Bonnet t-shirt on. Now, you know I love vintage pulling. You know I love historical pulling. You know I love the modified four-wheel drive truck class. This shirt was sent to me courtesy of Eddie Holland. I'm going to go ahead and throw up his web page up here as I tell you guys the whole story. And I want each of you guys out there watching, go check this out. EddieHollandDesigns.com, EddieHolland.com. You might see him on Facebook. This is the guy. He's kind of known for making all of the vintage graphic wear. I mean, if you want hero cards, if you want vinyl wear, if you want t-shirts, he's got all sorts of things and just spot on, absolutely spot on renditions of classic pulling trucks, pulling tractors, modifieds, as well as an array of motorsports. Now, as he and I have become friends, he's resides down there in Texas, I believe around the San Antonio area. We've been chit-chatting, and he's an old outlaw puller. He's the son of Roy Holland. Him and Roy and Eddie campaigned the Texas Blue Bonnet truck, as well as the modified four-wheel drive they called the Texan for years, from the early 80s on into the early 2000s. As a matter of fact, according to my results up here, they were the 1994 Outlaw Truck and Tractor Pulling modified four-wheel drive champions in the outdoor season. He's got other trophies at home that show other points championships. I think they probably grabbed a couple indoor championships as well. One of those vintage, Jerry Jenke powered modified four-wheel drives that ran alongside with Kenneth Popham and the Milky Way. But, they had the Texas Blue Bonnet, a truck that was actually sold to another outlaw puller, Joe Claypool, who lives just down the road from me, about 5 miles east of me over in Macon, Missouri. Supposedly that truck is still there. So great looking t-shirt. Thank you, Eddie, for sending that to me. He sent me a whole box of goodies. Definitely check him out. I'll peruse his website right here. You can, and this is just on behalf of me. I just thought it was something really cool that he did, but he's got just a slew of t-shirts. You can see the one that I've got on right here. It's awesome stuff. So if you love vintage pulling, there's a lot of that stuff down in Texas, the Alamo Speedway. He's got a lot of goodies from there. And he's a former Outlaw Points champion. Him and his father, who campaigned the Texan, was the truck that they won with back in 1994. One points championship to their credit. But we're going to go here in just a moment to a man who just picked up his fifth national points championship. I got a lot of questions for him because this is a guy who knows how to drive. It's a guy with a really, really cool power plant. They have a lot of pulling history, but I think they have a lot of good visions of where the future is going. I'm going to catch up on some comments before we introduce this evening's guest. Dick Blankenspur watching, as always, from Inwood, Iowa. Thank you for checking in. The Eric Berger says, hey, watching from Wilbur, Nebraska. Good to see you again. Hope all is well out there in the Husker State. Checking in with Kevin Heckert, watching all the way from Wisconsin. Love to see that. Cole Lundahl, maybe the biggest fan in pulling that I know out there, watching from Wakefield, Nebraska. And my new Facebook friend, Case Conover, watching from Lytle, Texas, as always. Love all those pullers down in Texas. Love all the fans down in Texas. Five-time national point champion. Final chance to get your guess in. Five-time national point champion. Who's it going to be? Of course, we are talking about Blake Otte, frequent flyer, all the way out there in Norfolk, Nebraska. Blake, how are we doing today, my friend?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Couldn't be better. Couldn't be better. It was a busy day of teaching. You know exactly how that goes. Remind me again. You're in the vocational or in the vo ag or but you're in education. Tell us what you do day in day out when you're not tractor pulling.
Yep, I teach at the Norfolk High School. I teach auto mechanics. That's my highest level class, my capstone class. And then I teach lower level auto mechanics classes, consumer auto, and introduction classes called power and energy. So pretty much anything from small engines to full blown auto mechanics works. That's what my day consists around. So.
How much of your day is textbook and worksheets and curriculum, and how much of your day is actually working with these young adults, putting hands on pistons, getting grease under the nails? Do you guys get to have some pretty cool projects? Anything that correlates to the world of pulling, or just internal combustion in general? Do you get to do much of that, or is it pencil and paper?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I always tell everybody that I couldn't be a real teacher. Like, Mike, you're a real teacher. I'm not anywhere close to being a real teacher. But I would say 90% of our work is hands-on. So, I have a classroom that's attached directly to my shop. I got a shop with 4 bays, three automotive lifts, and pretty much every automotive tool that you can think of we have. So we're pretty much a full-blown auto mechanics repair shop. Anything that the students are willing to work on, anything the students are wanting to do, a lot of it is all student projects themselves, because most of them are upperclassmen. They have their own vehicles that they drive and things like that. So you know they stay pretty busy for the most part, having their own stuff. And not all high school kids drive brand new pickups and stuff like that. So they have a lot of their own stuff that they need to work on. Otherwise, they're not going to make it to school the next day. So.
Well, I like that. So it's practicality. These kids have stuff. They have skills they want to learn. They have things maybe they need to keep those old beater with the heater getting by, which is what every 16-year-old needs to be driving out there. And they're earning classroom
Right.
credit all for it. So this is a win-win. My question for you. So you're pretty well versed in like you guys know the world of Allisons, and you know a lot of the world of Allison pulling. I think I've got the name right. Correct me if I'm wrong. Mike Holden years ago in the Dirty Diamond or the Dusty Diamond. Are you the modern day version of him? Off the top of my head, that's what he did. Wasn't he? He was like a mechanical
He was
instructor,
a
a ag teacher, and he would bring in his hot rod into the shop, and that was the class project, I believe.
Yeah, never met Mike Holden. I've never talked to him, but that was who he was. He was a high school industrial tech teacher, to my knowledge. And
Mm.
he was always the type of person that was doing more with less. Didn't come from any money or anything like that, but just a wizard with Allison stuff, and machining and building and fabricating and all of that. And I don't I guess if anybody ever held me on the same level as him, I'd be astonished. But
Well, the similarities are you can't help but notice them. You're the high school teacher. You run with the Allisons. Blake, I've been watching a lot of vintage pulling in the off season. It's something I like sinking my teeth into. I like the history of it. And Mike Holden's on there. A lot of Allisons were pulling in the 70s, pulling in the 80s. And what kind of cracks me up, you hear these announcers talk about, Indy Super Pull 1987, and they're talking about how old the Allison power plant is 40 years ago.
yeah,
It's only gotten, and yet it's a vehicle, or it's a power plant still winning points championships. Let's chew on that for a little bit. How did you guys land on that? Why is it something that's so captivating in pulling? I mean, you think about modifieds, and Allisons are a part of it. Like I said, they were old 40 years ago. They're not making any more of them. Walk us through what it's like to be someone who wrangles one of these vintage but still powerful beasts.
well, it all started in the late '90s. My dad, he was originally pulling what about what I would call the Nebraska Bush light modified class. Started off as like single, naturally aspirated 500 cubic inch limit big block Chevys. And he was running a 500 cubic inch B1 Chrysler at the time. And then in the later '90s, everyone kind of decided in the class that the class needed to have an upgrade. And kind of be more than just a naturally aspirated V8 class, because the variety was getting out there, and modifieds were getting more popular, and they decided to come up with a set of rules to make everything bigger and better. And at that time, it was based around one blown Hemi with a 1471. It was based around a single Lycoming T53 L13, one gas Allison, and at that time I think you could run naturally aspirated, any combination naturally aspirated up to like 1400 cubic inches or something like that. And that's kind of where it started, and probably 99 I think is when those rules got adopted. And then my dad sold his tractor that he had then and bought a twin engine Allison tractor out of Texas, and that's what kind of started the Allison thing. And I was 4 years old. I remember that tractor coming home, and it actually came home in the back of an ice cream truck, and we had to go get it from, there's a Blue Bunny ice cream place here in Norfolk, and we had to go and pick it up and roll it off the back of the ice cream truck onto our trailer. I remember that. I was probably about 4 years old, and that was the first time I'd ever seen an Allison tractor, let alone a twin engine Allison tractor. And my dad ran that for a whole season that way, hit or miss. There wasn't really anywhere to pull it around here competitively. So at that time, my dad and Brian Groney owned the Iron Dragon pulling sled, and we did all the pretty much the county fairs around here, probably 20-30 pulls a year. And so that season, the tractor just went and did exhibition runs at local fairs wherever we had the sled and whatnot. So made runs at like the Wayne County Fair, the Colfax County Fair, several other I think we pulled it in Gibbon maybe that year. So there was probably a half a dozen events that we went and ran it as a twin engine tractor. And then that winter he decided that obviously we weren't going to go run it on the Grand National NTPA circuit or anything like that. That was kind of out of the question. So we split it up and built two new tractors, and that's when the Frequent Flyer and the Warhawk were born in 2000. And then it kind of evolved very, very quickly after that for a while. Ran them pretty hard in the early 2000s, and then obviously me getting older and whatnot, and more involved in tractor pulling, just kind of snowballed from there. Especially after 2010 is when I started driving the big tractors, and it's got out of hand pretty quickly, I guess. So.
Who did you buy? So the twin Allison from? Who'd you buy it from? Who'd you buy it from? What was it
Um,
called? And did you keep
it
the
was
name?
it was called the Sundance, and
Okay.
there was a guy by the name of Bob Harlow out of Texas, and he also had a tractor, a single engine Allison tractor, turbocharged Allison tractor called Booger Red. And that tractor now is still in Texas. It's called Texas Thunder. I think Brady Morrow still has that tractor to this day. But those two tractors were, I guess, technically sister tractors at the time.
Now, you touched on something that I wanted to pick your brain about, and I promise we're going to get to your points championship season at some point. But I've got an Allison driver cornered, so I'm going to sit here and I'm going to chew on this for a little bit. You mentioned as you guys bought it that it was turbocharged. Now, these Allisons, they kind of come with some different options as to how you can set them up, and to the astute pulling fan, you can kind of identify this out there. They came with factory superchargers, but you
Right.
can turbocharge them, but they were also carbureted and you can fuel inject them. What's the magic combination in your mind?
So the Allison originally came from the factory with a centrifugal supercharger. The centrifugal supercharger actually sat underneath the carburetor, so there was a downdraft injection style carburetor that the supercharger actually drew all the air through. And that's the majority of the Allisons were made single stage supercharged with the injection carburetor on it. And then the later versions of the Allison also came with an auxiliary stage supercharger as well, and they had speed density carburetors on those as well. And then there was also some versions of the Allison that had a little bit bigger single stage supercharger on them as well. Not very many of those made. And then there was also a version of the Allison that was in the P-38, the twin fighter that were actually turbocharged and supercharged. So there was actually a big General Electric turbocharger that fed actually blew through the injection carburetor, and then the supercharger actually drew through the carburetor into the engine. And so Allison made tons of different versions of their engines, from beginning in 1929 all the way up through 43 or 44. And, all in all, probably 75,000 total engines were built in that time frame, I believe. And tons of different variants of them, different horsepower availabilities and things like that. Some of the lower initial horsepower ratings of the Allison, in the early years were like 1,000 horsepower, and then some of the latest Allisons that were they were actually built for the P82s. The last of the twin Mustang was kind of the last go around, the G series of Allison, and those were upwards of 3,000 horsepower for takeoff horsepower. So they came from all different combinations, from the factory. And what we're running right now is just a factory Allison centrifugal supercharger. We're limited to one of the speeds. 8.8 times crankshaft speed is what we can spin the supercharger wheel. So Allison made tons of different speeds of the supercharger wheels, and that's kind of what we're limited to on for rules for that. So that puts us probably right around 2,500 horsepower thereabouts with mechanical Hilborn fuel and style injection on it. So, yep.
So I'm going to throw a picture of your current one back up here again.
Yep.
So you're fuel injected, but you are running that centrifugal factory supercharger. Now, to the untrained eye, to the casual fan out there, they see that big horn on the front, and you're tempted to look at that and say, well, that reminds me of what the intake on a turbo on a 5.0 Pro Stock or something looks like. But that is a supercharger, but yours is fuel
Yep.
injected. It would not have been fuel injected factory, right?
Correct. That big horn on the front of the engine there is actually where the original carburetor would have been, and all the air enters the supercharger straight in from that horn instead of making a 90-degree turn down from the carburetor.
Mm.
So originally the carburetor sat on top of that supercharger, and that supercharger drew through a couple of like 3-inch holes, and you would pretty much take that where the carburetor mounted onto, it's a really big restriction, and mill all that off and put that 6-inch throttle body on there. So gets that air going straight in there, gets a little bit of a performance enhancement and a little bit easier breathing rather than breathing through a couple of straw holes. So
Yeah. You said you're at about 2,500 horsepower. Now, there are vehicles in your class. 3,000 is kind of the rough ballpark for where we kind of like to
yep.
see that light limited modified. Are
Yep.
there other vehicles out there? And you guys, I know your class well enough to know that you guys are all kind of frenemies or best friends. I mean, you give each other a hard time on the track, but if you want to go like look for a group at an outlaw pull, your class is always hanging together before and after the pull. You're very familiar with each other. You all live near each other. So you could probably answer, are there people in your class making more power than you?
Absolutely. I would almost venture to say that the Allison probably is one of the lower horsepower tractors in the class. If we're not going to compare, if we compared it to like a single, like one of Cody Meyer's tractors with a single
Yeah.
T53 on it, of course, the single T53 gets a weight variance to help make them a little bit more competitive. But the single T53 L13 has been, it used to be a really good combination a while ago, but everything kind of progresses, and now that particular combination, they're allowed the next size bigger turbine now. So they're allowed a T55 now. So he had a T50 F5 on for the first time this year, and it was trying to work the bugs out of that. But Yeah, I would say for the most part, I think, if you take like Wes's combination, he's probably around that 27, 2800 horsepower
Yeah,
mark.
that would be my guess.
Um, the turbocharged Chevy, like the turbo big block Chevys, they're probably in that same 28, 2900 horsepower range. The twin LS engines, turbocharged, they're around that range, probably 3000 could be very, very easily done out of those. The twin L11 turbines, now that they're allowed water, they're in that 1400 horsepower range per engine, so they're at 2800 horsepower as well. So, um, I think with the Allisons, we can do a little bit more with less, somehow. In the last couple of years, it's become really, really, really competitive. And more competitive than I've ever had to be in my entire life. I'm trying to grasp at things that I've never had to go look at. Went down a lot of rabbit holes this season just trying to. Kind of maxed out on horsepower. I can't really. There's not really a whole heck of a lot left, to do to the engine to get more horsepower out of it. It kind of maxed out on the rules, and so we start looking at chassis and tires and things like that. And if I were, like I said, if I were to pull against myself from 3 years ago with the same tractor, I guarantee I could put 30, 40 feet on myself from 3 years ago. It feels like, and I think that's kind of what it's all about. But there's a lot more to it than just trying to make more horsepower. Of course, horsepower helps a lot, but it's not really everything. You got to keep the tractor happy. You got to make nice passes, and there's a lot more horsepower, more powerful tractors out there than ours. I do believe so.
Let's talk about your season because you said that you kind of had to go back to the drawing board, had to figure some things out. This was, I haven't been here since day one, and you're five-time point champion. That puts you tied for 13th all time in the Outlaw record books, which that's gotta count for something. That's got to be pretty cool. And we'll talk about some of those people that you're up there tied with in a moment. But in the seasons I've seen you have, either you or Gage has really dominated polls. It's kind of, you just always knew that one of the two of those, V12 Allisons was just going to scream out the back door. There was more than one time this season where you fought some gremlins. Your setup wasn't where you wanted it. The early half of the season, you grabbed a win here or there, but there were also finishes that I felt were inconsistent from what I'd come to know you as. Was this kind of a grinded out season, or was there a point where everything came together and you kind of put on a hot streak? It seemed like this was really a war instead of just a couple of battles for you this year.
Oh, yes and no. I mean, the start of the
Okay.
season, I've never been able to start a season. I don't think I can't remember starting a season with a win ever. So it just always seems to work out that way. I don't know. You always go to the first few polls and you feel like you've never pulled it. You feel like you're relearning everything from the year before. And I don't know if we just you know don't take very good notes from the year before. Don't refuse to look at the notes from the year before, or what the deal is. But a lot of stuff changes over the winter too. So we went out or Ravenna at the first hook, and I had a different set of tires on than I did in the years past. And that was kind of the name of the game the year before, was swapping out tires and figuring out which ones we weren't going to use and which ones we're going to keep on the tractors. And so we got it figured out and finally left a set of tires on Gage's tractor that we knew worked flawlessly. So we parked his tractor with those tires on it, and that's where they stayed. So we had those figured out. So that wasn't going to be a wild card for us. So we put the different tires on my tractor, and I can't say that they hurt me. I just I try to start really safe with the tune up at the beginning of the year, because you kind of want to, you don't want to start swinging for the fences right away and end up having to work on it right away. So,
Yeah.
as the season progressive, obviously you get a little bit, more brave with the tune up, and start taking a lot of more fuel away from it. Start throwing a lot more timing at it, and there's several hundred horsepower there easily. Just those two things, and then I took those tires off that I started out the season with and put on a set of tires that we never tried before. And I think after one or two pulls of those, one or two hooks of those, I was confident that those were going to be the ones that I'm going to keep on for a really long time. And then I started running into some ignition issues. I had some distributor caps that I had bought in. I'd stocked up on a lot of Jaguar V12 distributor caps a while back, and I think I got a bad batch of cheap China V12 Jaguar distributor caps. They're really hard to come by, and so when you find them, you kind of buy whatever you can get, and I don't think they were the quality of what they were supposed to be, and I shattered like three of those in a row, and so I think I don't remember where that started. That started in Pawnee City, maybe, and then Pierce and Wayne, those three hooks in a row. I was 30, 40 feet short both all three of those events. So just due to that, one distributor cap, exploding each time going down the track. So I went back to one that was in the toolbox that was actually in worse shape than any new one, and bolted that that one on, and that's what I finished the season with. So and that's when everything just kind of lined up, and the tractor, you know, refused to do bad, I would say. So
Yeah, late in the season, and you put together some mega passes. Friday night in Wisner comes to mind, 408 feet out the back door. When you're set up or Gage is set up, either one is magically right. They have given me the two longest distances that I've ever personally seen, watching or announcing either one. Now, when he found the tires that he liked last year, are you running the same? You don't have to tell us what kind they are if you don't want to, but are you running the same ones on your tractor, or are you and him not running the same rubbers on the back? And to follow up, are there differences between your two guys' tractors, or are they almost identical?
as far as engine wise, the engines are exactly the same. Chassis are as close to the same as you could possibly get, other than the paint. The tires are probably just the main difference. The tires that he had on his tractor all this season and the end of last season, he done really good with. Were tires that I've always done really good with, and the set of tires, honestly, that we put on my tractor were the spares that we carried with us. We never
Mhm.
planned on ever running them, and we actually carried them around with us for like 3 years, and apparently we should have bolted them on a long time ago, because they work 10 times better, and which they really showed. They actually work better than the ones we thought were the good ones. So no, they're just 30.5 Puller 2000s. Date codes on Puller 2000s mean everything. So
Okay.
we figured out there's a couple different dates that work really well. Several different dates that are way heavier than others, several different dates that are way lighter than others. Um, so we found the date codes on those ones that I've been running, and I'm always looking for more of those. But it seems to me like the we could go down a rabbit hole of tires, and
Yeah.
that's going to be a never ending fight. I would venture to say that if we get halfway through this next season with these same tires on, it'll be miraculous, because we're probably going to have to start looking elsewhere, because I mean, other people are going to catch up, or um, you know find the same things we've done. So it's a never ending battle, and as soon as somebody finds something, it's just then everyone's going to have it. So the tire thing's never ending. It just kind of sucks, because now brand new sets of tires are $20,000, and not everyone can go and do that, in a season. That's a big pill to swallow. So
So we talk about this, and I think the pulling world is very aware that this is the tires have been the big thing for probably the past 5 years or so. At one point it was weight, at one point it was horsepower, and those things are still king. But tires, and is you talk about how that kind of turns into an arms race. Is there a solution to that, or is that just kind of the nature of the beast with how that market works right now?
well, I used to, it kind of we went from, it's like a feast or famine type of thing, because
Mhm.
you know for years and years and years, Firestone was the only go-to manufacturer, the only ones making dedicated pulling tires. So
Right.
the market was cornered, and I love that there's options on the tires, and because if you look at any other form of motorsports, dirt track racing, things like that, they're cornered with certain tire brands that they have to
Yeah.
run for sponsorship reasons and things like that. And then now all of a sudden, a regular $100 tire that they were running, once a week or whatever is now a $400 tire. And so now your expenses, just quadrupled. And, usually in that world, I mean, you can only go a couple nights on a set of tires and you're throwing new tires on. Well, the tractor pulling world's a little bit different. At least we get a little bit more longevity out of our stuff, but also we're talking about a $20,000 set of tires, not a
Yeah.
$800 set of
Yeah.
tires. So, you know, it's good that there's options. And I love that people are, pushing the limits of what a tire can do and what you're getting out of them. But also it sucks for the puller because there's always going to be people out there that are going to push the limits. They want to win. And
Right.
there's a lot of people out there that money is no object. And if they have to buy 2-3 sets of tires in a season to make it happen, they're going to.
Sure.
And for those types of people, that's awesome. I wish I could do that, but it's just like, where do you draw the line? At some point the little guys lose out, and maybe that's the sign. Maybe that's the door opening, and that's when it's done. So there's a point to that, and I've also often wondered, where the money stops in tractor pulling because you know we don't get paid anymore to go do it, and the sponsorship, I love what the Outlaws do with sponsorship and all that, but if anybody's ever been on the marketing side of things, getting sponsorships tough,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
so getting companies to give you thousands and thousands of dollars for sponsorship isn't as easy as it looks. So I commend whoever is doing that with Outlaw and other polling organizations. They do a good job at that, but how we expand polling into bigger, better names like I don't want to compare it to NASCAR. NASCAR is a terrible, terrible comparison, but bigger
And
motorsports.
NASCAR, to interrupt you a little bit, NASCAR has really, I think, lost their corner of what they used to be. We talk about, NASCAR sadly isn't what they were, and they're in a big
Right.
identity crisis right now
Yep.
too. So great sport, but yeah, a lot of times people say, well, we got to follow NASCAR. Well, NASCAR is not nearly what it was 20 years ago.
No.
So
No. So yeah, I oftentimes wonder because the polling world's a lot different than any of those big racing scenes and stuff like that. Because you have the 3 or 4 big names in NASCAR, you have the 2 big names in NHRA, funny car and top fuel drag racing, and it's like, well, is that what tractor pulling is going to boil down to? Are we going to have 3 or 4 teams that go out there and battle it out because they can, or are all the little guys gonna be done at some point? I don't know how to see the future. I don't know, what to think of it, and I don't honestly have the answer for any of it. I have no
right.
idea.
Right. No, and all your observations, I think anyone who's steeped in the world of pulling is right on, seeing and saying what you're saying. And yeah, we all know that we're passionate about it and we're looking for the answers. And it does seem like there's a lot of positive reinforcement from the fans. I think that we are gaining new fans. I think the Outlaws certainly have the best fan experience that I've seen since I've been exposed in pulling as a fan or as, a worker, either way. So there's a lot of elements falling into place, and we just keep fighting the good fight and pushing forward. Speaking of pushing forward, here is the question that those on the real inside want to know. Okay, Ron, he's watching. He's got his phone on up in the airplane right now. Will we see the Twin Allison 2026? If it was under wraps, it's not under wraps now. You guys have a project shaking out there in the shop in Norfolk. Tell us what is it you? Is it your dad? When I was at your shop, your dad kind of acted like it was his big project out there. What's going down with you guys?
Oh well, it'll be out. I don't know when it'll be out for 2026, but um it might be the last poll of the year. I don't know. But so there's a lot of work left to do on it. We started
But you
started
guys
mock
are
st-
building a Twin Allison mod. To the
Yep.
fans that might not
So
know, you are looking two
yep.
brand new Allisons. Are you guys stealing yours and gauges, or where are
No,
these
it'll
coming
be
from?
it'll be a, it'll be it's a whole new build. We got enough stuff
Okay,
to so the tractor will be capable of running 3 engines. So we'll be able to pull the top engine on and off. And there's really nowhere for us to go be competitive and pull with 3 engines on it anyway. So 99.9% of the time it's gonna have 2 on it. Running the
three
running the
three Allisons. You're gonna be set up to run three Allisons, like Diekman's rat poison or something like that.
Yep. So we bought the gearbox off of Steve Bollinger's Money Pit
Sure.
tractor when he decided to park that one and go to Hemi's. So we've been slowly collecting stuff. This has always been on a back burner project for like the last 5 years. Ever since I think COVID year, we went out and bought that gearbox from Steve, and um, just slowly collecting stuff. It's difficult to write checks for a lot of those parts, right away, and do it at one jag. It's impossible for us to do that. So it's a process. But we just started mocking everything up and jigging everything up last week on it. So most everything's here. It just has to get done. And with a growing family here for me, it's very, very difficult for me to get time aside from work, aside
Yeah.
from my little boy, my wife, that. So um, you know, it'll get done. It's just it's just gonna take some time. I can't put a solid date on when that'll actually happen. So
Chris Kilbarger talking about Allison's and unique setups over there. He says, have you ever looked into the Green Monster and Green Fighter from across the pond that run the Pro Chargers? I'm not entirely certain, Blake. The Green Monster might be the old rat poison. The rat poison I
all
think
of
went overseas.
all of Green Monster stuff is all of they came to the States in uh I want to say the early 80s, and late, or maybe it's probably later than that. It was probably the early 90s, let's say. And they bought all Mike Holden's stuff. So
Okay.
the Green Monster actually started off as Mike Holden's tractor.
Mm.
And so Mike Holden had a tractor with 4 engines on it. And when Mike was done, uh, Horse Camps, which is Green Monster in Germany. He came and bought everything from Holden's, as well as some other pullers. They got a lot of EJ Potter's Allison stuff as well. We've been to Green Monster's shop. The thing is, yeah, they've done some awesome stuff with Allison's, and they're superchargers they're running. They're not pro chargers. They're actually 100% homemade. It's all their own design. And the cool thing about them is they have such a team there that it's almost impossible to replicate that, because they have like 10 dedicated individuals that are all really good craftsmen. Some of them are, actual engineers, a lot of good fabricators, good mechanics, things like that are all dedicated to that team. And it shows. And they've taken the Allison to a whole new level that I'll probably never be able to financially do, I don't think, at this level, because just the amount of machine work and just material wise that they go through is just insane. And I commend them for every all the R&D that they've done on everything. They've helped us out on quite a few things, and kept us going a few times. And yeah, I mean, we're pretty close with those guys. And
Yeah.
they have done quite a bit in the Allison bearing world. So they're actually got a company to reproduce Allison main bearings in undersizes, which is keeping us going quite a bit. So we bought quite a few sets of bearings from them, because they're really the only supplier for aftermarket Allison main bearings. So
So you said you've actually been to their shop. You've
yep.
traveled to
Yep.
Germany. So here's a statement that I would have made before the show, and I'm going to kind of confirm after saying this. You guys are you're very good friends with the Bollingers. Now, obviously, you're friends with this team from Germany. Um, I would say west of the Mississippi, that you, your brother, your dad are as well versed in the Allison, or as well steeped in the world of Allison pulling or culture as anybody out there. I mean, do you feel this is something you're well integrated in, you're well connected with? Do you feel you're one of the pillars keeping this power plant going? And is that part of why you run it, to keep this going?
I would say that at this point in time, yes. Just because the big names and Allisons that have existed. Obviously, everyone knows Wayne Longnecker. His roots are in
Yeah.
Allison's, but Ever since he got away from V12s, however many years ago, not that his name hasn't is not synonymous with Allison's anymore, but
Yeah.
it's been a while, so
Right. Right.
I
Yeah. So,
think.
for example, when you think of Wayne, you don't. Most people do. Ron Stone would, but I would say that like my sons growing up, or even myself, when I hear the name Wayne Longnecker, I'm going to see the twin Hemmies, a little
Right.
bit. But yeah,
Right.
absolutely. He was a forefather in this, no doubt about
Yes,
it.
absolutely. So those names in my mind are always going to be the ones that, I'll never be a Wayne Longnecker. I'll never be a Steve Bollinger. I mean, those are the guys that have always been, you know, the people I've looked up to my whole life, being a young Allison puller. I mean, I've been around it my whole life. I remember going to Wayne's shop, going to Steve's shop when I was like 5 years old. When my dad was first getting into Allison stuff, and those guys just absolutely dropping what they're doing and helping out to you know teach my dad everything that they knew about Allison's at that point. There's this. I honestly wish my dad would have got into Allison's, like 10 years sooner, and we'd have a whole hell of a lot more parts. I can tell you that, because it's just a slight late to the game in the Allison stuff. Even though he's been into it since about 1998. So we're into it 27 years now, which is a long time. But like Steve got into the Allison thing probably 10 years sooner, and he was able to buy out a lot of the boat racer guys and things like that, and gone through, gotten a lot of good stuff, over the years, and was just ahead of the curve that much longer. But then, on the big scale of things, Steve gave up on the triple engine Allison in the unlimited class, and went to the V8s, and we've thought about that a lot of times, because it's so much easier. It's so, I mean, like the amount of work and research and scrounging around that you have to do to make an Allison work is unreal. And I mean, and nobody ever really quite will understand it until you're actually doing it. And you're like, I was digging through a bunch of junk the other day and power washing stuff off that had been sitting there for years, and I'm like looking at all this stuff, and it's like, somebody that's into the automotive machining world and modern V8s and things like that, they would look at this stuff and they would take it to the nearest scrapyard, because it's literally junk. It's 70-year-old junk that you got to dig through the next best thing, and uh and make it work. So
It would be, there's a lot to be said about how we really are shifting to the automotive V8, and that's kind of the, what the proof's in the pudding with that. With the big mod classes, I think I look at pulling from the perspective of an entertainer. That's kind of the lens where I'm at, and you'll see 5,000 people stick their fingers in the ears when the V8s come, and you'll see 5,000 people take the earplugs out because they want to hear the sound of the Allison. It would be a shame if it ever died out, even if it weren't competitive, but just to lose. There is no sweeter sound in the world of motorsports. Any sporting event you've been to, every announcer is going to say that every single time. It is one of the coolest sounds you'll ever hear. I want to go on a journey kind of like down Allison Lane here. I've got some pictures. So here's where you're at now.
yep.
Before you pulled this tractor, you had this version of it. Are
Yep.
these you can already kind of see you're talking about, that supercharger out front, and then you're seeing this one's a little different. Same power plant, or tell us a little bit about the differences between these two.
Oh, the biggest difference there is that the air induction up front with the velocity stack and the throttle body. That was the biggest difference from that tractor to the new tractor. That tractor there's a really really old tractor. That tractor. There was an Allison puller out of Iowa called John Strothman, and he was a guy that retired from tractor pulling, and Steve had bought him out. I don't know, probably late '90s, early 2000s, somewhere in there. And I remember I was probably 4 or 5 years old, dragging a bunch of stuff home from John Strothman's place, and that ended up coming. Steve ended up with that tractor, and Steve got the engine off that tractor, and my dad got the chassis, and that's what kind of started off as the original frequent flyer. And then the Warhawk started off very similar builds. They were a little bit different, but the tall corn special tractor from John Strothman turned into the frequent flyer, and then the Sundance twin engine tractor, the rear end and planetaries and everything out of that turned into the original Warhawk tractor. So they were pretty close, frame rail wise and roll cage wise, chassis wise. In the beginning, just there's quite a few differences in the rear end, but similar builds at that time. But those would have came out in like 2000, 2001. Those tractors did. So
So I learned something, and this is going to tie in nicely. You mentioned Allison's from Iowa, and I just put a couple of pieces together in some of the Allison World history just this week. Now, you seem to know your stuff pretty well. Can you identify this Allison puller out of Iowa?
well, I can't make out the name on that tractor there.
So it's this. This is the Persuader. This is Ron and
Ron
this is Ron
Warshkow's tractor.
Warshkow. Yep.
Yep.
So this is
Yep.
Ron Warshkow's. The reason I bring this tractor up, I was under the impression that the Top
Bollinger's
Gun
top.
tractor.
Yep.
That
Bollinger's
I
top
was
gun is
under the
Warshkow's.
impression
Yep.
that Bollinger's Top Gun was always built by Bollinger's. That it just originated there. And only recently did I realize that no, that started off as a Warshkow build. They
Yep.
then sold that to Bollinger's. Here's where it's all going to tie in with you because, Blake, I think here's about where it all started for you. I think this
Yep.
is you sitting
Yep.
on Bollinger's tractor right
Yep.
there. So it all kind of comes around in the world. Is this where it started for you, looking at that and just thinking, man, I got to drive one of these someday?
That would have been one of our first trips out to Steve's house. I remember that was probably about 2001, somewhere in there. Um, I think that first season that we ran, maybe melted a piston or something. And at that time, Steve was one of the only ones that was willing and able to pull a sleeve out of an Allison cylinder head and put it back in. So we had a set of banks that we needed sleeves put in, and that I think we took a couple sets of banks out there, and Steve swapped some sleeves around for us, and I think that was the first trip out there that we made. And they were actually pulling at their hometown pull that night in like Taylorville, Illinois, or wherever. And we went there to one of their pulls, and then we came home. But yeah, I mean, that was a big deal. I
Yeah.
remember being a little
Yeah.
kid, I mean, and obviously being around the single engine tractors, but then you seen a tractor with two engines on it, two Allisons on it,
Yeah.
which we had, but nothing like that, so
Yeah.
Steve at that time, the Bollinger brothers at that time, they were very, very competitive on
Oh, yeah.
they were, even on the Grand National 7,400 pound class, two Allisons could hang back then. Nowadays you're not even close. Yeah, but at that time he was running a lot of Grand National. He was running a lot of ITPA. ITPA was running 7,400 pound class, and some region NTPA stuff, and I think that was kind of their heyday is about
Yeah.
that picture right there. So
Let's
yep.
talk points championships. So you won points 2017, 2021, 2022, 2023. You let Gage have one last year. You didn't get the four-peat. You come back 2025, five-time national point champion. Like I said, that ties you for 13th all-time. You're tied with Dennis Goodwin, Elmer Haug, Wayne Longnecker, Dave Novak, and Clem Schluter. Clem Schluter already in the Hall of Fame, went in last year. I think there's a 90% chance every other name that I read will end up as a Hall of Famer in one capacity or in one association or another. Number five, you're getting into some elite territory. What does it mean to be in with names like those other competitors? What's number five mean to you?
Well, to be in the same category as Wayne Longnecker, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah. Did you know that going into today? That, I mean, we've been sitting
No,
here talking about V12s and
I
Allisons, and you and Wayne are now tied.
no idea. No idea. I hadn't added it up. It's not really something that I don't know. I keep,
Sure.
it's nice to do it, but I haven't kept track of that kind of stuff. I couldn't even tell you the years that those happened. I'd have to go back and look at pictures of a banquet or something that got posted on Facebook to see what year those were, something like that. But
Yep.
I don't know. it's quite an honor, I guess,
Sure.
but it takes a lot of hard work to do that, and I was, even, like last year, it's not my championship, it's our
Yeah.
championship, I
Yeah.
mean, it's like, and having two tractors in the class helps. Like, I guess that if I was to pick an advantage to have, that's the one. I mean, I went through and did a ton of statistics on, you know, how many times the second tractor beat the first tractor, and hook positions and things like that.
Mhm.
And 50% of the time the second tractor beats the first tractor. So there 50% of the wins can be chalked up to having two tractors. And
Yeah.
also I went through and even went down the line of, like how many times that I number one hook position. So I think this year I was like number one hook position like 8 times or something. So I was number one hook
Hmm.
8 times,
Yep.
which at the time seems unfair. Like, no way is this a random number generator, because I've hooked 8 times number one. And at the time you're like thinking like, God, I hate being first hook. I hate being first hook. But at the end of the year, all said and done, I think I got 6 number one finishes out of the 8 number one hooks that I had. So now that I'm going back and I did all the looking at other tractors that pulled first position, and the win average for first puller position in our class is 50%. So if you're gonna hook,
Really?
statistically, if you hook number one in our class, you have a 50% chance of winning before you even go down the track.
Is there
But
anything to explain that? I mean, you've been doing this for, a decade or more. Yeah, that surprised me a lot to hear. Is what do you make of that? I mean, or is that
well,
just one of those things that it is what it is?
Well, correlation doesn't always mean causation.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot that plays into that. So if you take a severely underpowered tractor and put them first hook, that doesn't mean they have a 50% chance of winning. So,
Yeah.
but you take all of our tractors in a class, it speaks volumes in how close the rest of the class is, because if you can take any other competitive tractor from the class and you know they have the same win average in first place that I do, that's pretty good. So yeah, it followed through with every other tractor that pulled number one hook position throughout the season. So I think the win percentage, it ended up being like 51% win percentage for the number one hook total out of everybody. So
That's super interesting. Yeah, because one is, no puller wants to pull number two. Two is
no.
the dreaded position. You don't even get the option then, but nothing to look at. You're on the spot. I would hate to have that sensation of having 30 seconds to decide, am I turning this down? Am I keeping it? It's tough, but that's a really interesting bit that you've tapped into right there. What
and
do you
I
feel
and I
like? Go
and
ahead, buddy.
I hate being number one hook, just because. But and now that I've gone through the statistics, I'll take number one hook every single
Yeah,
time.
now you feel good about it. You're like, hey, so,
Right.
and of course, you know
But
what's going to happen now. Now next year, you're going to get the number 9 draw.
yep,
Eight
yep,
or 11
yep,
times. So
yep,
it is. It's one of the things I hear a lot in the trailer pullers. Saying there's no way this is random. The universe is quirky, and it just,
yep,
like you said, it feels bad, but then
yep.
you walk away and realize, hey, this might have been a blessing in disguise. Where's
Right.
your class going in the future? You guys are such a neat group. A lot of eyeballs. Fullpull.live to your class to a lot of eyeballs this year. A lot of people chimed in and they said we love what the Outlaws is doing with the light mods, all the variety. It knocked away some big time people in pulling. They loved watching your class. Well, where's it going? I mean, do we have more unique power plants? Is there a unique power plant that kind of scares you? Who's coming for you? Just tell me about where this class is going in the next 10 years.
Well, I hope it can continue growing, because
Yeah.
it is very, very, very unique. There's other classes out there. Illinois has a pretty good group of tractors as well that's similar. Missouri has some tractors that are similar as
Yeah.
well.
Yep.
The biggest thing would be to get everybody on one page and get the rules all the same. I think Missouri MSTPA, I think, mirrors our
Yeah.
rules 100%. If I remember correctly, ITPA, they're out there. They got some different rules than us. It's similar, but if everyone could get on the same page as far as the rules go, you have a pretty good chance of making the class something better than it is. Um, But the thing about our class is I think it gets also lost in a lot of translation because of it's a lower level class. We're not you know, in my mind we're not a premier class. We're not the big mods. You know, we're not unlimited super stocks. You know, you won't have the numbers as the 466 limited pro guys and things like that, because if you take a look at everybody that's involved in our class, and we're all just working, you know, what I call working class, you know. So you know, I'm a teacher, my brother's a teacher, my dad's a teacher. You know, we're not a big business owner, not a big trucking company owner, not a big farmer, not a big rancher, not a big cattle operation, none of that. Okay. So our class is on a little bit different level as far as dollars to spend. You know, it is an entry level class, and it does you know, don't take a lot, you know, not doesn't take as many dollars to be competitive in it, that as if you were to compare it to other classes. So I think it loses the, you know, it loses the appeal to some people that, you know, want to be higher end. They want to be the elite, you know, and if they have the wallet to go do that, and the time to go do that, then that's what they go do. Whereas, you know, at our level, you know, you know, a lot of us, since we're, you know, 8 to 5 workers, you know, only have so many dollars to spend. And you know, it kind of you know, it kind of get, you know, just it gets washed under the rug sometimes, I think. And I hope that you know, a lot of people, we've gotten a lot of attention, and you know, I certainly love the attention that it's gained, because this class has been my whole life. I'll be real honest with you. You know, so you know, I seen the beginning stages of it when I was a little kid, all the way through to, you know, today. And you know, I felt like, you know, my dad, myself, my brother have done a really good job of promoting the class. Have done a really good job of helping other people get involved in tractor pulling. You know, anytime you can help somebody out, and you know, get them involved, that you bring a new competitor, you bring new fans with them. So you know, my two best friends that I grew up with now pull against me, you know. So uh you know, help them out building their own, you know, building their tractors and things like that. And I think that's more what it's all about, and I think that's the only way you're going to grow tractor pulling in, you know, in a bigger way. um is I guess I've always said this anytime, you know, anybody asks, is like, you got to help somebody out, because, you know, tractor pulling is a
Yeah.
generational sport. If you weren't born into it, or have the pocketbook to write a check to get into it, you're not going to get into it. it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's as simple as that. But if somebody out there that has the interest in it, granted, you got to throw them a line. You got to help them out. You know, provide parts. You know, labor. You got to provide shop, whatever it takes to do it, because that's the only way that that pulling has a future in my mind. So you know, pulling as a whole, the age of people that are involved is way too old, you know. And which, you know, I mean, it correlates, because by the time you're at a point in your life where you can spend money on a stupid hobby,
Sure.
you're 65, 70 years old. It's
Yep.
just where the way it
Yep.
goes, you know. I mean, it's no fault to anybody.
Yeah.
But you know, and the only young people that are involved in it are because of generations. And
Yeah.
you know, I'm just
Yeah.
lucky enough that I landed in the right spot at the right time. And you know, generationally, I get to be involved. If it wasn't for that, then you know, I don't know what I would be doing, you know. So
It is interesting, the niche of pulling, to really understand it, or to have the passion, or the way that people like yourself and myself think about it. You know, I come from just a lifelong of fans, and this is all we knew. And I was raised, you know, reading the Puller magazine, and watching, you know, Cavalcade of Power and all these. It's something that you're born into, like you said. But I think if we continue to push outside of that, especially on the fans' perspective, and that's where it goes back to what you guys are doing. You talk about how your class is a entry level class, but no one in your class, I'm going to throw a picture of your mod up here again. Every last vehicle in your class is drop dead gorgeous. And the pound to pound entertainment factor that you give for the fans, there's a reason that these fans love it. you've got some wild drivers, you've got some wild rides out there, and you all take such phenomenal pride. If you look at the level of detail and the paint jobs on some of your guys' tractor, it's not a, and you kind of know what I'm talking about. Like there's some brush pulls, or there's some, well, I could only afford so much, so it went to the horsepower, not to the fit and finish. But you guys do a great job presenting a whole out there. And there's a lot of personalities. I would encourage anyone, get to know some of the guys in the light limited modifieds with the Outlaws. There's some cowboys out there, and you guys will give each other a hard time, but you'll help each other. Would you agree? Are you guys kind of a tight niche? Your class, you all kind of have each other's back.
Yeah, right up until the hook drops.
who is who would you say is the most entertaining on and off the track driver? I mean, is there one guy out there that you feel just really hammers the throttle, or is not afraid to go for a wild ride, and maybe is just as kind of wild out there, or kind of humorous out in the pits? Who's the best character in the light limited mod class?
Hands down, Cody Meyer.
Okay. No, didn't even have to think about it.
Yep. No,
Awesome.
he's a character. He's a character inside and out. And you want to talk about the most worldly person you have ever met in your entire life? That guy's been to all corners of the earth and done everything. So, yeah, I could sit down and conversate with Cody for days on end, and he has a new story every single time, and something always correlates. So,
And he is almost to turbines what you guys are to Allison's, right? I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely.
that's his world,
Yep. No, hands down, they have done more for the turbine world and tractor pulling and real aviation than probably any other shop in the entire country. I guarantee you that.
If you weren't pulling an Allison, and we'll pull, because you've pulled turbines before too, so maybe I pull those out. If you had to pull something totally different, what catches your eye the most? What do you find most unique? Or would you try something that no one's done yet?
Right now, like the 50 Pro Stock, I guess, trips my trigger the most.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the 4-1 classes get, I don't know, I don't want to say something I shouldn't, but there's a ton of single turbo black smoke blowing classes out there. I'm not a diesel guy by any means, but if there was one diesel class that I would build a tractor for, it would be that 50 Pro Stock class.
Would you ever strap a diesel onto one of your light mods, like say Wes has done?
Yeah.
it's on one of your old frames, isn't it?
Yeah.
Didn't he run in your old chassis?
If you, yeah, I believe I mean, we the joke around here is, for our classes, you can have the most horsepower, you can have cheap, or you can have reliable. Pick two. You can only have two.
Yeah.
Pick
and
two.
I feel that was so I feel that's kind of like the big block Chevys with the turbochargers. A couple people told me a while ago, they said when those guys want to, if they just decide they can beat everybody on any given night, there just might not be much left for the next couple of pulls, because they have that ability, like you said, reliable or horsepower. You don't get to pick all of them.
Right. So the closest thing to being able to pick all three is some sort of turbine combination. The problem with that is if you weren't happen to be friends with Cody Meyer, you're not going to find, it's very difficult to come up with that kind of stuff too. So, but they are very reliable and they produce a lot of horsepower, and for what they are, fairly cheap. I mean, there's definitely way more expensive options out there. The diesel option, like Wes's, is not the cheapest option. It might be one of the more expensive options, but you do have one of the higher horsepowers, and they are extremely reliable. I mean, you have the most, the 4-1 class is the most research and developed diesel class in pulling right now, hands down. And so you have all of that technology, that rollover technology from those guys, that you get to use for free, essentially, and not have to really pay for any of the R&D. And that's a pretty awesome combination to have, just because you can kind of ride some coattails of a 4-1 guy and use his old stuff or whatever, and still have great stuff to use. So,
This just came to me. Wes is kind of your guys' version of Donald Nelson when Donald Nelson put the DT 466 on alcohol, because that's just a super stock motor. And back in the early 2000s, when that was pulling, the heavy supers, the light supers, everyone wanted a Brent Long motor. He said, let's just slide one of those over here. I mean, that's kind of like you're saying. That's what Wes is doing. He's saying it works over here.
yep,
He's got to take 3,000 pounds off,
right.
but he's just he's putting it right there.
Well, the nice thing, the thing, like I said, there's so much R&D in that it's not even
Yeah.
funny, and they're reliable. They got them reliable. They last a season or two. The bare engine, and without any too big of malfunctions. You're gonna have turbo and stuff like that here and there, but base engine wise, those things are as bulletproof as it comes as far as making 3,000 horsepower reliably. The automotive stuff always trips my trigger. I mean, I essentially work on cars for a living, so automotive stuff is easy to work on. So if you're working on a turboed big block Chevy or a turboed LS motor, or even a blown Hemi or whatever, that stuff is super easy to work on. I mean, and everyone's got parts for it. Parts are a phone call away. That's the nice thing about some of that stuff. Granted, you're going to pay for some of them nice parts. You're going to pay for some of the information on some of that stuff, but it's always there. I mean, the blown Hemi is the most R&D performance engine in the entire world.
Yeah.
And if you need something for that, it's a phone call away. If you need
Yeah.
tuning information on something like that, it's a phone call away. If you need a supercharger from somebody, it's literally at the trailer next door to you at a 2-wheel drive truck guys
Yeah.
or wherever. So it's all there.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty in some of that stuff. And now sometimes you pay for it, but it's handy and it makes a lot of horsepower. And there was a thread on Pull Off the other day about the bigger mod class in grand on the Grand National level, about what the rules need to be to get more combinations involved and things like that. And it's like, well, the free market has spoken on the blown
Yeah.
Hemi style of stuff. I mean, obviously it's the best bang for your buck. Otherwise we wouldn't have 4 engine mod tractors out there with them on there. So it would have
Yep.
been something different. So you can't argue with that. I mean, you just absolutely can't argue with some of that stuff. So
And you need to be able to, I think fans need to remember, find variety too in maybe places that it hides.
yep.
10 years ago, if you didn't have four motors on there, forget about it. And all of a sudden, the triple setup started
Hmm.
messing with people. And then it was, one on the front, two in the back. And then we saw that flip, and motor arrangement, tires. There's always a lot going on, but you're completely right. How do you see more variety? Beat them. Someone's gonna find something. You're gonna have
Yeah.
to find something that beats them.
And the
Final
other thing
two.
is, I
Go
always
ahead,
see a
Blake.
lot of comments on some of that stuff. It's like, well, we don't have classes over here like they do in Europe. And if you compare tractor pulling in Europe to the United States, it's two totally different things. And
Yeah.
if you were to go to Europe, you're going to see a lot of different stuff. But at the end of the day, the stuff that wins is still same stuff that wins
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
There's just a lot more people over there that are willing to try different things. Doesn't mean they're dominant with it. They're just out there having fun, and they have a team that
Mhm.
behind them that allows them to do that. And there's a cultural difference there quite a bit that not a lot of people understand. And that's kind of the biggest difference from here to there. And I always hear that comment all the time. It's like, well, we do have that here. If you want to see a mod class with variety, just come to an outlaw pull. That's as simple as it
Mhm.
gets.
Yep. Final two thoughts. We ran overtime. This has been an awesome interview. I've enjoyed this conversation a ton. First of all, got to make sure we check in with Lori. Lori says make sure you get your reservation for the Outlaw banquet and dinner. If you haven't yet, be sure and contact Lori. So that goes out to all our Outlaw family out there. Blake, that's just 2 weeks away, man. You got everything ready? You going to be
Yep.
down at the banquet again this year?
Yep. We'll be there.
Awesome. We will see you down there. And then Chris Kilberger, great question right here. Who's your pulling hero?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, that's really hard to narrow down. There's so many people that have been so influential in so many different ways, on every level of tractor pulling, and for me, if you're gonna narrow it down to, a who's who, somebody that, everyone knows, if it's, like if we go way back to like a Mike Holden or something like that,
Sure.
like that, never, like I said, never met the guy, never talked to the guy, but I can definitely tell that he would be my kind of guy. And
Yeah.
another person would be like somebody like EJ Potter,
Yep.
somebody that was involved in Allison tractor pulling and on the very grassroots level of it, because EJ was the heck of a character. If you ever read his book, or if you need a good read, that's a must read. But yeah, I mean somebody like that, and then you start talking a little bit more modern, or more a little somebody like Wayne Longnecker is always going to be
Yeah.
in the top of my head all the time. If Wayne's hooking to the sled, you know, I'm going to be watching him.
Yeah.
And so I mean, in those names, and to be like you said there, same number of championships as Wayne Longnecker. Like if you would have told me that, 10 years ago or something, whatever, you'd be like,
Yeah.
yeah, right. And it's
Yeah.
like, that ain't gonna happen.
If you go back and you tell this kid right here, hey man, one of these days you're gonna have as many points championships as the River Rat. That's got to be a reason you pull. That's got to be because you're a kid with a dream, or because you remember looking up to these people. That's got to mean a lot to you. Hey Blake, congratulations on your 5th national points championship. 2026 right around the corner, looking for number 6. Who do you need to thank for all this success before I let you go?
Oh, well, obviously, like my wife, she stays at home with my little boy all the time, and growing family and stuff like that. So, there's a lot of hours that get spent outside of home. And now he's 2.5, 3 years old now, so he can start to come with me a little bit more to the shop, and not be such a, you gotta carry him around all the time, keep him out of stuff. Well, you still gotta keep him out of stuff, but he understands and he can help a lot more. So that's starting to turn a corner and be a little bit easier. But I mean, just my dad for, and my mom for, getting me and my brother into this thing and keeping us into it, because like I said, generationally, this is where tractor pulling is. So for us anyway, there's no way I would have been able to do it, if it wasn't a generational thing. I felt like I've done a really good job of taking all of our equipment to the next level all the time, and thinking outside the box, and doing all of that. And but I remember when I first started pulling in 2010. We had, my parents had the boat, the camper, we did all that kind of stuff as little kid, when we were little kids. And as soon as I was 16, and we were in, I guess I realized that, tractor pulling is, that's me, that's what I'm going to be. Uh, that summer, the boat went bye bye, the
Mm-hmm.
camper went bye bye, and I haven't seen a camper or a boat since then. So, tractor pulling is what we do during the summertime. I made a career choice around tractor pulling so I could tractor pull during the summertime. So, you know, my parents, my brother, he's always there helping out when we're in the shop. He's the right hand man, everything, and just
Yeah.
trying to get everybody on the same page of being able to do anything in the shop. So if somebody's gone, I'm not the only person there that can do this or do that or whatever. And then our sponsors for this year, Radiant Roofing, they're like our big sponsor on the side of the tractors this year. Wattier's Auto Body, they're the ones that done all the paint work on both tractors, and just phenomenal workmanship on that. Creighton Lockers
Yeah.
actually gave our whole light modified class meat and anything grilling out materials wise all summer long. So we had food at every single pole, brought to you by Creighton Lockers. Rolling Coal Trucking, Rolling Hill Supply, and Rain Tree Liquor Store in Wayne, Nebraska. They provided us with all the beverages for all season long. So
So hold on. You guys have a desert. I'm, if I ever got into pulling, I was going to build a pro stock truck. I was going to be a door slammer. But I just heard that you guys have all your barbecuing provided and all your recreational beverages provided. You have sponsor, and you're calling this an entry level class, man. You guys
yeah.
are. It's fun, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
you
just
can't
they're
not
they're
have
great.
fun at the pulling track.
They're grassroots people that want to help out, and so Creighton. Honestly, the Creighton locker in the liquor store are probably the most important sponsorship.
What's the name of the liquor store again?
Rain Tree Liquor
Where's it at?
in Wayne.
So, okay, I have a certain puller in my mind that I assume was integral in landing that sponsorship. Would I be correct in assuming that maybe there's a puller out of Wayne in your class that you
No,
know,
and actually,
really?
actually, the Rain Tree sponsorship started. My wife's parents are really good friends with the owners of the Rain Tree Liquor Store, and they happened to be at, I think, like, we had a diaper keg or a party or something at the shop, and they were there, and I was like, hey, I need a beer sponsorship for the season. I said, I need 2 cases of beer per pull. He said, no problem, and that was like 3 or 4 years ago, and I've been doing that ever since. So I think Wes has a good sponsorship as far as beverages goes as well. He has
He's got the White
the
Dog
the
Pub or
white
something
dog.
like that.
Yep.
Mhm.
So he does kind of the same thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, kind of interesting, but it works. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm gonna have to talk to Ron. We're gonna have to see if Ron and Mike can get some sort of like a beverage deal worked out with someone before we
yeah.
go on the road in 2026.
Yep.
Blake, that's too cool for school, man. Congratulations on your points championship. Good luck the rest of school year. Good luck, with the upcoming pulling season, and just keep it up, man. Thanks for the great
Yep.
interview.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. We'll see you in a few weeks.
All right. Blake Ott, 2025 light limited modified points champion on the Outlaw Truck and Tractor Pulling Association. Thunder in the Dirt Case IH National Series right there. Points championship number 5. Man lives, breathes Allison's out there. Just an overall good dude. The Ott family does a ton for the world of pulling, does a ton for the Outlaws. They're great people. If you haven't seen the light limited modified class, be sure to check it out. It has all the variety. He calls it an entry-level class, and I think some people think of it as that, but it is premier-level entertainment and premier-level competition. Thank you for watching, guys. We'll be back 1 week from tonight, Outlawed Live. Thanks for checking in. Like always, have a great evening.